as I said, yesterday afternoon at 1:38 p.m, I see from my email, I got an email from New Zealand First congratulating themselves, and understandably so, because this is a win, that the new COVID-19 inquiry that we campaigned and fought for will start in November. The current Royal Commission of Inquiry into the COVID-19 response will be divided into 2 phases. In phase 2, which is really New Zealand First's contribution of the inquiry, will start from November, will be independent, full-scale and public, as we committed to in our coalition agreement. New commissioners will be appointed and revised terms of reference will include, and we'll talk about that in just a second, the Deputy Prime Minister, Leader of New Zealand First, Winston Peters, joins us now. Winston, good morning to you.
Good morning.
How are you this morning? You must be a bit chipper after this. This is a good win.
Well, yes, but I'm seriously brassed off because when you had this inquiry that Labor began 18 months ago, the terms of reference were utterly inadequate. Mm-hmm. And there were people on it who were thoroughly compromised. We said so then, and we're saying so now. And at least we've got an agreement to have a proper one come November.
I guess the things you're brassed off about is the fact that the other one's still carrying on, the secret inquiry with Professor Tony Blakely as its chair, yeah?
Precisely. I mean, has anybody looked at the involvement that he had with the past government in advising them, passing on his knowledge and what he thought he knew? And I would have thought that when this came to a full-scale inquiry, even back then he would have thought to himself, well, I can't do this because it's not expansive. It's not going to get to the truth of it. It's not going to tell us what we need to know as a forerunner for when we go forward, future event. Established. So the moment I saw it, I thought this is utterly compromised, and this is the party's backside about how they acted or misacted during this time.
Winston, can I ask this question of you? What was the rationale for National and for ACT particularly, but for National, I guess, to carry on with the inquiry in its imperfect and clearly irregular form?
Well, you know, they can explain that to you. But when people who are losing 35 years of their business and all their staff and having to start all over again because of being shut down by 4 months of the lockdown, one of the second longest lockdown in the world at immense tens of billions of dollars of cost, they did not cross even the forecourt of Parliament to talk to the protesters. And then in the end, it deteriorated into the kind of thing that happened. And I've never in all my career, in a long career at that, ever seen parliamentarians not being prepared to go and hear protesters out. Whether you agree or not, your job is to hear them. It's called democracy.
Mm. No, I don't disagree with you at all on that issue. Listen, the inquiry that will report back, the first one that's going to carry on, that's in secret, that's still under the chairmanship of Professor Blakely, what's going to happen to that? Do you know? Does it get published? Does it have any input into the second inquiry that you've set up or established?
Well, Michael, you're asking questions that the mainstream media just don't seem to get their head around. That's precisely what we've said. What is going on here and why we picked up this imperfect, how shall I say, convenient inquiry to suit the former government when the people are screaming out to know what's the truth here. And internationally, it's emerging a lot of evidence to say that there were the how shall I say, the COVID vaccine had a purpose, but no one was told of its potential downsides and its effects, and a lot of people have been injured by it. They were entitled to know that, surely.
Well, they were entitled to say no too, weren't they? They were entitled not to be made second-class citizens because they made a personal choice about whether or not they wanted to be vaccinated. I would have thought that was a simple freedom that was available to them.
Well, you'd have thought so, but you're a Democrat. You understand the principles of democracy and the fundamental things of people's right to say no. That's a critical part of democratic thinking. But this is worse. They were told, if you don't do this, you're going to lose your job. All your income, doesn't matter if you've got a mortgage, a wife or a husband or children, you're out, gone. This is vicious. It was fascist in the extreme, in my view.
No, well, you know, again, you'll get no disagreement with me on that. So now the new inquiry will start up. The terms of reference, haven't been drawn up yet, although you're obviously going to be looking at the use of vaccine during the pandemic, the social impacts, obviously, of the lockdowns, the economic impacts of disruption to business, whether or not government decision-making followed the rules, and whether or not it was reliant upon good empirical evidence. Is it for the three of you, National, ACT, and yourself, Winston, as a leader of New Zealand First, to what? Establish who the new commissioners are going to be in the terms of reference? That is still to be defined. Is that correct?
No. In a speech in Whangarei in the last campaign, it was a wall-to-wall meeting. I set out what we demanded of the terms of reference and of the commissioners. And we never changed. We wrote them into the coalition agreement, and we want the terms of reference to be of that type. That is terms of reference that are designed to get at the truth, not to cover up the truth.
Okay. When would you expect to be in a position, I think it's November, is it, this year, that you're going to announce phase 2, or is that when the phase actually starts?
Phase 2 will be announced in October and get underway in November.
Okay. And how long do you...
It should be 6 months. There's no reason to have any longer inquiry than that. But get in some overseas experts and start sharing information that is all over the media internationally, but getting no coverage from the mainstream media here in this country at all. And does that surprise you? No, I don't, because they're utterly compromised as well.
Yes, well, that's the next thing, that because the current inquiry, which is costing $19 million, is held in private, and we don't know what is being said. So it means that people can turn up, say stuff that's bollocks, Winston, but because it's not in actual fact out there in the public, nobody can say, no, that is bollocks, and I think I'll go to the inquiry and show you the proof that it is. Will that happen with your phase 2?
Ours is going to be in public, and people will know what's being said, and people can stand by what they are saying. There'll be difference of opinion, but we're going to have a bit of sunlight shone on this matter, and we'll have the inquiry in the open, and where people can find out on a weekly and daily basis what's being said. Now, the extraordinary thing, Michael, is what on earth's happened to the mainstream media that you're asking all these sort of 101 questions and they can't even think about it?
Oh, we know that the mainstream media are only interested in opinion, not in fact, Winston. That's become one of the reasons why they are so despised and disregarded these days, unfortunately.
Well, Television One last night didn't even bother cover it.
Yeah.
How could they get away with that?
Yeah, I know.
Pick up the Post today. This is the Post in Wellington, and I can't find any coverage of it at all.
Oh, this
is devastating stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. No, that's just sort of typical, really. Let's be honest about it. They were cheerleaders, Winston, for government policy at the time, so they're as compromised as anybody else I would have expected.
Look, they're a malignant virus on our society themselves and the way they're behaving. And I believe in the Fourth Estate. You can recall the speeches we made 35 years ago to Eddie saying this institution, the Fourth Estate, is critical to the quality of democracy. I wish they'd grasped that to start doing their job.
Hear, hear. All right, now, just quickly on that, talking about differences in coalition, the transgender and sports policy, it's written into the coalition agreement. You've put it in there as well. It essentially says if you're transgender, you're going to have to think again, because it's not a good idea to have men playing community sport. Now, we've seen a number of sports throughout the world, Winston, from swimming to rugby league, athletics, decide that trans women should not be allowed to compete at an international level. And yet, incredibly, they are still competing and enjoying a physiological advantage at a community and local level in New Zealand. When is this coalition government going to enact your coalition agreement on transgender sport and participation?
Right here, right now, we're saying to Sport New Zealand, you had a code going forward on this matter, which is totally inadequate. It's prejudicial and extreme. You're going to see people biologically advantaged getting an unfair advantage on the sporting field, and all sports start at a younger age. No one becomes an All Black on day 7 without having spent the first 6 days all their youth getting ready, or in any other sport. And it's just astonishing that people like Sport New Zealand can sort of demand taxpayers' money while they perversely ignore what the taxpayers want in terms of fairness. What's wrong with these people? What's their understanding when it comes to the very concept of sport itself? Sport's meant to be about fairness.
Understood. And you're trying to make sure that Sport New Zealand policy and Raelene Castle as its chief executive enacts that. At the moment, though, she's gone, as I understand, to the Minister of Sport and Recreation, Chris Bishop, and said, well, this is our policy, give us a direction, and hasn't got one back from Chris Bishop in terms of his ministerial portfolio. Will you be pushing him on that issue?
No, what's happened here, I've got no doubts, and nor has my team got any doubts, that Chris Bishop has been sadly misinformed by them. They were asked to read the coalition agreement, as everybody's been asked to, as it happens after every election. So what's in it for us when it comes to our portfolio or our responsibilities if I'm getting taxpayers' money? Now, they have misinformed the minister, I've got no doubts, but we've made it very clear to him of that misinformation and how we are not going to settle for it, because it's in the coalition agreement, already agreed to, signed up to stop it. Now, I want them, the people out there want taxpayers' money, to be fair about it.
Yeah. So where do we go from here? Does Chris Bishop have to make a decision, or do you, in actual fact, have to go to him and say, Chris, this is what it says in the coalition agreement. We've signed this. We've got a contract, mate.
Oh, look, it's not going to be difficult and complicated. I mean, this guy's flat out in all other sort of portfolios. And you'd expect people under him would say, I've got it, I've read it, I'm going to do this. But you know something? Here we are at this point in time, having got a coalition agreement, and you've got all sorts of groups out there, including civil servants, who either read it and understand it, or read it and purposely don't want to understand it, or don't want to abide by it. And the answer is, well, if you don't like it, go somewhere else. But that's the deal with democracy. When the people speak and the majority has decided for the next 3 years that's the way things are going to be. Or you could have a referendum. Now, on the question of referendum, this is massively supported by the New Zealand people.
Yeah, no, and that's what public servants seem, and the politically correct seem to most distrust, Winston, the concept of direct democracy. Can I, and finally, mate, you've been deputy prime...
Michael?
Yeah?
Remember the story about, or the poem about the River Thames? And it's really because it's quite important, because it passes by the Houses of Parliament in England, but the River Thames was said, for men may come and men may go, but I go on forever. And you've got civil servants that think that way. Politicians may come, or governments may come and governments may go, but I'll go on forever. So whilst you're there, I'll undermine you on the way through and get my way. And now we've got a message for them. We've got a message for them, and it's all bad. You're going to do what the people want.
So you think that the public servants, the senior public sector in Wellington, can't be trusted?
I don't think it. I know it. I've been a long career. I've seen governments being frustrated or getting misinformation or badly advised or not being told both sides of the story. So they can sit there and evaluate the decision that they should make, having had all the information to do it.
And can I just give you a compliment, though? You've done a bloody good job as the Minister of Foreign Affairs in the first 8 months. Have you enjoyed going back to that portfolio? Have you enjoyed re-establishing those contacts internationally?
It's funny to say about enjoying it, and the answer is no, I'm not really, I'm not enjoying it because it's been hard. We've done more countries in 6 months, take out at Christmas, than the previous minister did in 3 years. But there were massive vacuums out there of a lack of connection by New Zealand. And we set out to try and cover it in this year, the whole of the Pacific this year, and much of the rest of the world as well, to get ourselves back in the business and back in the race. This country is still capable of being saved and turned around, but we'll only do it by international engagement and personal relationships that lead to far greater business and exports for this country and wealth creation. It's not complicated. When you say I enjoy it, Michael, and you're sitting at an airport for 5 hours waiting and twiddling your thumbs and you've got no connection. It's not all beer and skittles, so to speak. And you leave the city, you come in the morning, flying all night, go straight to the hotel, change your gear, change your suit, and you're back in business in an hour. And when it's all over that day, you're going to the airport and you say to yourself, this is just one more city I've never seen.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But
however, it's a privilege to do this job.
Well, you're still doing a bloody good job, and I don't think anybody would deny that at all. Listen, it's been a pleasure talking to you, mate. Catch up with you soon. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, thank you very much. Cheers then.
Okay, all right.